October 3rd, 2024, Riot Games had announced the termination of BLEED Esports from their Valorant Champions Tour, or VCT for short, mainly because BLEED had failed to maintain their partnership agreement. This started a domino effect where people from all corners of esports started coming out detailing how BLEED had neglected them and their payments. However, you will soon learn this story is bigger than Valorant, bigger than esports, and bigger than gaming in general. A story that teaches us that silence can truly ruin many people's lives. September 30th, 2021, BLEED Esports was listed as a company in Singapore. 2 weeks later, they stepped into the public eye with announcements of a 1.5 million Singaporean dollars investment campaign. A good chunk of it coming from Hydroflex, a premium water purification company whose CEO at the time was Lincoln Lim, possibly nephew of Peter Lim, the owner of a football club and considered one of the richest men in Singapore. Yahoo News also describes BLEED's current CEO, Marvin Goh, as its esports director during this time. There are many articles written about him as a cybersecurity expert. Goh states at 14 years old he would create cheats and exploits for MapleStory, but due to a brush-in with the law at this time, he changed his ways. He will focus on white hat ethical hacking, teaching others about security loops and vulnerabilities. After his dealing with the authorities, he will also go on to study blockchain technology and help develop Bitcoin Core, one of the first Bitcoin wallets. At least that's what some of these possibly paid for articles state. The funds he was able to secure for BLEED Esports in 2021 were intended to be used to innovate and develop a futuristic gaming hub for players and staff. They would go on to host boot camps for groups like Global Esports Valorant Team in 2022.
Thank you, BLEED Esports, for providing us with your high-tech gaming PCs, supporting us on our Valorant APAC journey. So we are coming to your bootcamp to return the PCs.
And a Rainbow Six Siege team as well. It is speculated that this property is currently listed for 13.5 SGD. Thanks to digging by Redditors, they state his residence can be found in the middle of a Singaporean Bay Area, where rent for a one-bedroom apartment can go anywhere from $4,200 to $6,000. All these factors help create the idea that BLEED Esports, as well as Marvin Goh, had deep pockets. However, in 2022, it was reported that Lincoln Lim and Marvin Goh both allegedly punched, kicked, and pushed a woman at a nightclub. This resulted in her suffering from injuries and bruises. If found guilty of causing voluntary harm, one could be jailed up to 3 years and/or fined upwards of $5,000. Goh's court hearing was scheduled for October 21st, 2024. But if you fast forward about another 11 months, you'll see another court date / mediation, which means that the prosecutor and defense may come to a settlement. It's unknown if he will walk free with a hefty fine or go to prison. It's also interesting to note that BLEED Esports is under EGIX Holdings, which is described as a management consulting service, and may have a part to play as to why BLEED was struck off as a company in Singapore during September of 2023. Once a business is struck off, it is illegal for them to trade assets and make payments in the company's name. Around the same time, Esports Player of the Year Ye was signed to BLEED Esports to what was believed to be a lucrative deal.
I'm Jacob, otherwise known as most of you probably know, Ye, and I play for BLEED now.
This begs the question as to how BLEED was able to operate despite being struck off. They would go on to do business with a number of organizations after this. One notable event was the Eflare tournament that concluded on November 19th, 2023. It was an event supposed to celebrate Counter-Strike's 2 presence in Southeast Asia and boasted a $100,000 prize pool. BLEED Esports Valorant team was also invited to this event as Old Goats. However, as a partner team in the VCT, they needed to obtain approval from Riot for attending third-party tournaments, which they didn't. As a result, they had to redraw from the competition. However, there was another problem. It had been over 6 months, or 198 days, since the winners of the tournaments reported that they had not received their payments. The people in charge of this event states it was due to a payment processing hurdle, and were looking for alternatives. An issue that could be resolved in 2 to 3 months from that statement. This tournament was initially brought to by Goh by a Hong Kong businessman as well as other unknown partners. They were able to convince BLEED CEO to fund some of the money that was initially needed to operate this event. It was reported that Go paid some of the talents in advance, roughly totaling 23,000 USD. Marvin Go claimed that he was able to be reimbursed for the initial payment, but only after several months of back and forth. BLEED CEO was also able to pay the talents, but it was mainly in crypto, a form of currency that is illegal in Pakistan, and left the likes of Tea Time unpaid for his work, and even till this day too. Payment delays, crypto, and esports players being left in the dark starts to be a common pattern that we see when dealing with BLEED Esports. On October 3rd, 2024 at 9:43 p.m. PST, the VCT's X account would announce that BLEED Esports would no longer participate in their Tier 1 league. They would state it was due to failures to comply with the team's participation agreement, or TPA for short. This gave Boom Esports a spot in VCT, but also raised more troubling concerns for those connected to BLEED. October 11th, 2024, BLEED's Counter-Strike team came out and revealed that they dealt with delayed payments, buyout issues, and other factors esports organizations should pay for. For example, both the coach and players paid for their own boot camp, which is usually the responsibility of the organization. BLEED will respond by saying the roster had been paid through since August, with September salaries in processing at this time. Their former coach will rebuttal with a list of organizations and players not paid yet, as well as tournament winnings not properly distributed. Almost $250,000 not accounted for when it comes to their Counter-Strike dealings.
Were the team buyouts ever paid either?
I was coming to that. God knows what for Jacob, and then we agreed to 130, but it was actually 230. The 100K was supposed to be paid by the players, like 50K each. They pay it, we give them higher salaries, it all evens out, it's fine. Right? The players paid, the org didn't, and they didn't pay their salaries. Nexa's buyout was $60,000. Nexa paid his out of his prize money. BLEED never paid.
During the very same day, a Rainbow Six Siege player mentioned how he had to move and is currently owed over $35,000. If it was not for his streaming efforts, he would have not been able to survive. Then a Dota 2 player who was formerly with BLEED states a similar story of payments being delayed for a total of 4 months. I do want to mention one of the members of their Valorant team who goes by Crazy Guy states that he had been with the team since 2022 and had never experienced delayed payments. Also that the owner was willing to still put a team up for Tier 2 of Valorant's competitive league, since BLEED still qualifies for it. It appears though most of the members from the Valorant team are no longer with the organization and are looking for new homes. The ruling came during a time where many teams were finalizing their roster in Valorant, meaning that these talented players and individuals like Scary and the coach will most likely not be in Tier 1, or at least not at the start of it during the upcoming season. And it seems as if other esports teams are following suit. Their CS team has already cut ties from the name BLEED Esports and rebranded as Unpaid. Their Apex team has done something that's usually unthinkable in esports by terminating their own contract with BLEED. Usually it's the other way around. And lastly, their Rainbow Six Siege squad is also terminating their own contracts with BLEED, a very successful team that has made it to multiple high placements. And just when you thought things couldn't get any worse, BLEED's mobile team was reported by the company's very own VP of operations to be stranded in the Philippines because of a boot camp, blaming upper management in the process too. When the VP of operations and upper management are going at it, it just shows how messed up things must be for this organization. Luckily, the families were able to pull together money and book flights for the players to go back home, but things should have never gotten this bad to begin with. The crazy part is that BLEED's poor management and lack of timely payments may have continued to go unpunished if it wasn't for Riot Games' involvement, possibly putting many others in financial difficulties. It was rumored that their Valorant division was about to sign another massive deal with Aspas, a well-known player and duelist. It's been stated that it was actually someone within BLEED that tipped this all off to Riot Games once rumors of Aspas signing a big deal with BLEED started to spread. Riot is responsible for doing background checks on who they let into the VCT, but it seemed that it was unfortunate timing as to how BLEED was able to slip through. They won Ascension in July 2023, but the company got shrugged off in September of the very same year, possibly giving them enough time to cover up their shortcomings. Many people most likely remained silent on the issue in hopes of getting their payments fulfilled later in the year. However, it was that very same silence that made this BLEED situation worse than it needed to be. We have seen in so many other industries how silence can cover up wrongdoing, and therefore letting injustice go not only uncorrected, but also letting it negatively spread to others. The story of BLEED Esports is a tale that began with ambition and promise, but spiraled into a series of broken agreements, financial mismanagement, and ultimately a fall from grace. It serves as a reminder of the importance of transparency, the power of speaking up, and not turning a blind eye to something that seems odd. In a world where silence often shields wrongdoing, those who raise their voice can prevent a small issue from snowballing into a massive disaster. Proving one person's actions can have a lasting positive impact on many. I want to say big thank yous to the likes of Pedro Romero, Bodork, Tanmay, and Reddit user Drag Me Home Now. Their reporting and gathering of information made this video possible. And as always, stay safe, be a KDA warrior, and I'll see you later.